Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for that generous introduction. You forgot to mention how much student loan debt I have as well with that, but it's an honor to be here about a subject that I get asked about literally every single day at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, and that is hemp, a crop that connects Kentucky's past with its future. And I want to cover just three main topics with you today, hand it over to one of our magnificent processors, and have time for some Q&A. Number one, we're going to discover what is hemp, its brief history. Number two, what we accomplished during the research phase of industrial hemp. Then number three, where we're at now, the commercialization of a crop that many of our farmers find curiosity of, but also are trying to transition their farm, many of them former tobacco farmers, into a crop which I believe that if any state can capture the commercialization and economic development of this crop, it's going to be industrial hemp's natural home, and that's the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So first, to understand hemp, you have to understand Kentucky's agriculture portfolio. Kentucky agriculture is responsible for 200,000 jobs. There's only one industry that has more workers in Kentucky than agriculture, and that's manufacturing. We are responsible for over $45 billion economic activity in Kentucky. So if you look at Kentucky's GDP, about $208 billion, Kentucky farmers really punch above their weight class. And perhaps the most important statistic to know today about Kentucky agriculture is that we have 76,000 farms in our state. We have a lot of farms in our state, and we grow everything from apples to zucchinis and everything in between. At last count, we have 400 different crops and livestock commodities that are grown in Kentucky. We simply have the variety and diversity that other states don't have, particularly our friends out in the Midwest, those flatlanders from states that start with I. Here in Kentucky, we have things other states are just envious of. And we're in front of a business community. I'd like to remind you that those 76,000 farms are actually 76,000 small businesses making payroll and employing Kentuckians every single day. And we don't just grow crops and raise livestock, we also add value to it. So raise your hand if you ever had a biscuit from McDonald's in your life. So I think there's some liars out there, but everyone, if you ever had a biscuit anywhere on the East Coast of the United States, came from Kentucky. If you've ever ordered sausage from any of the 647 Cracker Barrels in the United States, that sausage came from Kentucky. We even process crops that aren't even grown here. The world's largest peanut butter processing plant in the world is in Lexington, Kentucky. And being a good Kentuckian, we don't liquefy all of our corn into bourbon. We also, when you fill up your tank with gas, about 10% of that is ethanol as well. And so why do I ask this question? Why do I ask about these other commodities when we talk about hemp? Well, our farmers are diversified. It's not uncommon to see a family farm growing 4, 5, sometimes 10 different crops. It's the reason why we're number one in beef production east of Mississippi. It's the reason why we have the best genetics in the world. And that half of all the chicken eaten in the world has its genetics come from Kentucky. These are things that I think you all should know about, because a lot of times the limelight is thrust upon one crop or one opportunity, but Kentucky agriculture is bigger than just one thing. And so let me ask you another question. Raise your hand if you've ever worked in tobacco at any time in your life, and raise it high and look around. And keep your hand raised if you're working in tobacco in 2019. My family still grows it, but that shows you visually right there how Kentucky agriculture has changed in the past 20 years. We had no choice but to change our ways and diversify and try different things. It's the reason why in Kentucky, when it comes to agriculture research, we have a culture of innovation. It's why no-till corn was invented here. It's why conservation practices that got us out of the Great Dust Bowl came from Kentucky. And it's why right now in West Africa, a Kentucky tobacco plant was genetically modified into an Ebola-fighting vaccine to save people's lives. And it's because of that culture of innovation. It's because of King tobacco, which used to be our number one crop, not it anymore, still a top 6 commodity. But less than 4,000 people are growing it, that Kentucky was eager to be first in something instead of last when it came to industrial hemp and bringing this crop back from the dead. And so what is hemp? Well, hemp is cannabis sativa. What separates it from its illicit cousin is a congressional definition of the amount of THC found in the plant. Industrial hemp is 0.3% or less, as defined by Congress. It is a fibrous plant. It's a plant that if you grow it for fiber, it could easily reach the height of this ceiling. It's a crop where Kentucky dominated throughout the entire 1800s. Henry Clay, hemp grower. In year 1900, 75% of all the hemp grown in the United States not just came from Kentucky, but came from Lexington and the 9 surrounding counties as well. During World War II, people like my great-grandfather and countless other farm families grew hemp because the U.S. government asked them to for the war effort, which created the phrase, "It's rope, not dope." And so today, we have the history, we have the culture, and we have the critical mass to bring this crop back. And so in 2014, we were given an opportunity. I started working on this in high school. I remember writing an essay when I was a senior in high school. What happens after tobacco? And I wrote it on industrial hemp. So in 2014, when Congress gave us a gift, a very narrow research exemption called Section 7606 in the Farm Bill to experiment with this crop. And we did something wise back then. We put the research into the hands of our farmers. We didn't constrict it like other states did to research universities and maybe a hand-selected few. Here in Kentucky, we decided to let our tobacco farmers, many of which still had hemp equipment up in their haylofts, have been untouched since the 1940s, to try to bring this crop back from life. So there's 3 main buckets of hemp. There's fiber, the product that my great-grandfather will be familiar with today. Today, we have clothing lines. Patagonia just signed a contract with one of our hemp growers. We have concrete made out of hemp fiber as well. We also have healthcare applications in the works for fiber and textiles. The second bucket, seeds, grain from hemp plants. Think of it no differently than soybeans. You can currently go to Kroger today and buy hemp seeds that will not germinate, but you can sprinkle them on your salad just like sesame seeds. It's an oil seed. You can crush it like a soybean, take the oil out, which are being used for natural lubricants. We have a company in Northern Kentucky making makeup out of this. It's also appears to have value for food products if the FDA would allow us to do it. And of course, when you talk about seed is also feed. So we're looking at the livestock component as well with research. The third bucket, which comprises the majority of our hemp program participants, are cannabinoids. Cannabinoids, think of it as a chemical compound found in the floral part of the plant. There's about 100 of these that we know of. You're probably familiar with 2 of them. We know a little bit about THC, the hallucinogenic cannabinoid. We also know about CBD, which if you go all across Kentucky and our nation today, you can buy CBD legally right now. There's 100 others. We're begging for research. We simply do not know what other potential this crop has, and it gives Kentucky's researchers, and particularly our R1 universities, an opportunity to research the potential of this. Over 80% of the hemp grown in Kentucky this year will be for CBD purposes, and the majority of our businesses are using that as their primary business model, although some are mixing it up. You all are numbers people. Let me give you a few numbers. 2014, we started out with 33 acres in the ground. In 2018, we had 16,000 acres approved, and as of this morning, my office has approved over 60,000 acres to be grown in 2019 in Kentucky. It started out with about a dozen farmers. Last year, we had 211 farmers. This year, we just approved 1,000. So you see that the enthusiasm continues to have a quadratic relationship, and our enthusiasm continues to grow at an immense rate. What about hemp businesses? When we first got started, there was only a handful of them. Last year, in 2018, we had about 70 incorporated, and as of today, we're knocking on the door of 200 hemp companies. And perhaps one of the best statistics of them all is that we have 500 jobs that exist today in Kentucky that did not exist just a few years ago because Kentucky chose to lead on this issue. And these are jobs beyond the farm gate. These are not the farmers. These are people processing hemp into intermediate or final products that Americans can now buy legally for the first time in 2 generations. We expect in 2019 to easily surpass $100 million in sales of Kentucky-grown, Kentucky-processed, Kentucky-proud industrial hemp products in the United States. Now, we ran a hemp program. It continues to evolve. The program, if you're unfamiliar with it, go to my website. We can give you more information you can digest. But it simply is this. To be part of our program, you need to be a farmer. You need to give us GPS coordinates of your crops, of your greenhouses, so that police can know where it's at. We run background checks as well, and you have to have a license from my office. Just because the 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp does not mean you don't have to have a license from the State Department of Agriculture. So please, 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 as you're answering questions in your communities, make sure you refer them to the Kentucky Department of Agriculture before moving forward. So the research phase was successful. Just last week, the United States Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, was in Kentucky at the invitation of Leader McConnell. We spent the entire day talking about this crop, sharing stories, meeting with farmers, taking him to research facilities across our state. Because of the leadership that we have in Congress today, particularly Leader McConnell's language has made it into the 2018 Farm Bill, and the success of 30-some states which have successfully introduced hemp into their boundaries, many of which copied our program verbatim, we had enough votes in December of last year to get the Farm Bill across the finish line with a hemp legalization provision in it as well. I was at the White House, watched President Trump sign it into law on December 20th, 2018, and within moments, Kentucky became the first state to submit a state plan which legally allows us to grow hemp in America. We're going to continue to be the tip of the spear. We know that hemp may not be for every farmer, may not be for every business investor, but we're going to go to bat because we want to be first in something instead of last. So we're moving into the third phase, the commercialization of this crop. We have some growing pains. Things that made sense in the research phase may not make sense in the commercialization phase. So let me share with you my vision. It's my vision that we create and continue to streamline a program to allow Kentucky to have the best hemp program in America. One that allows us to get government out of the way and let our entrepreneurs and our innovators and our risk takers go out there, create a product that people want to buy, and create some jobs at the same time. And oh, by the way, perhaps give some hope to some of our small farmers who used to be tobacco dependent and allow them to grow a crop that many of which was grown on their farm several decades ago. We have taken hemp off the Schedule I narcotics list, but there's still regulations. We want this to be an economic development driver. And remember that stat I told you a few moments ago about hemp was kind of concentrated in the Lexington area in year 1900? We're making sure that's not the case in year 2019. We want hemp to thrive and flourish in every county that wants to try it. And I'm so proud to announce today that in 101 of our 120 counties, hemp will be grown this year. And this has given us a chance to share the economic potential across our county lines and work together. We're also making sure that we use the Kentucky Proud marketing program to help promote Kentucky Proud products legally in America. And I also want to give a shout out to Kentucky's Economic Development Cabinet for working with us to make sure that our hemp companies qualify like any other company in Kentucky for economic development incentives, to make sure that we put them on equal pairing with other job creators as well. Now, we have some growing pains. There's still some issues left to be resolved that continues to put gray hair on this head. Last year, if you asked me what the biggest issue in hemp was in America, I'd say it being classified as a drug. That's not the case anymore. But other issues have risen up. Number one, we do not know what the FDA will do when they eventually assert their jurisdiction over food-grade products. We have asked them to be constructive partners. I'm the vice president of all the ag commissioners in the United States right now, and we're working with the FDA on a weekly basis to try to educate them and to let them know about what hemp is, but more importantly, what hemp is not. And that we want hemp to be sold like a nutraceutical, a healthcare supplement. If we want to give Kentucky farmers a chance and support particularly our small farmers, allow hemp products to be sold no differently than, say, omega-3s or healthcare supplements at GNC or CVS, et cetera, et cetera. We also have issues and hesitancy among the banking industry. I've met with many of you in this room. We're searching for guidance. We're searching for clarification to ease up the hesitation that some of you may have to work with and finance some of our farmers and processors across the state. We also have experienced issues with transportation, where some legally grown hemp products have been held up in other states through interstate commerce. This crop is bigger than it ever was before historically, and so we must have the assurance that when we ship products through other states that they're not held up. Particularly in states that have chosen not to pursue industrial hemp, we need to send a clear message: don't get in the way of Kentucky job creators, and let our legal products pass through your states as well. We also have a lack of agriculture technology that other crops have enjoyed for decades. We need the EPA to act. I was very fortunate to host Administrator Wheeler to Kentucky to help explain the need for modern herbicides and pesticides, which are legally registered in other countries, which will help our yields go up dramatically as well. There's still a lack of product standards. We need to make sure that when people go out and buy, say, a bottle of CBD, that when they say it's 25 milliliters, that they have an assurance that that's what's in that bottle. And besides, we have a consumer that demands transparency these days. And so we need to have a development of product standards as well. And perhaps the biggest thing left to do to help hemp get off the ground is education. That's one thing we've done well in Kentucky, mainly because we had the historical connections. And there's still vestiges and fingerprints of hemp in America, particularly on historical tours around my part of the state in Georgetown, about the economic presence that hemp once was and about the economic development that it can be. And I'll leave you with this thought. We may never experience another time during our generation to experience a crop that goes from zero to its maximum potential. My father did research on a plant that wasn't from America back in the late 60s at UK when he was a grad student. That crop is now known as the American soybean crop. My kids and my grandkids one day might look back and say, we got to work on something a little bit different, a crop that literally connects our past to its future, and that is industrial hemp. Will it replace tobacco? The honest answer is we don't know. So for some farmers, they're making more off hemp than they made on tobacco. Some farmers are losing money. Some have decided to be part of our program, decided it wasn't for them, and moved on. But there's ever a place for it to develop and be successful, it will be in Kentucky. And so my goal is that when you travel the state or travel the world and say you're a Kentuckian, they're going to ask you about bourbon, horses, Colonel Sanders, and hemp. Just like Idaho has potatoes and Florida has orange juice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. A while ago, you heard Lee give a lengthier introduction of our next guest who will be coming to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Garrett Bain of Gincana Global USA.
Thank you. I don't think there's much left for me to say. Commissioner Quarles covered everything. Should sync up with him next time. So he gave you a great introduction into the history and to the industry, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the business side of it and what that means for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So today, Kentucky, the global leader in hemp, and I'm going to explain how that's possible on a global scale. Do we have here we go. So who is Gincana? So as mentioned in the introduction, we're going to do a brief video here. How do we cue that? Hit again. There we go. It's a dramatic clip, but a beautiful clip. So who's Gincana? We're a vertically integrated grower. Essentially, our hemp producer, take it from genetics, farming, extraction, refinement, and even into finished goods. Over the past 5 years, we've grown pretty substantially. We were one of the first programs in the pilot program that Commissioner Quarles mentioned back in 2014. Shortly after that, just an acre here, an acre there, experimenting genetics to see if we could climatize the plants for the state of Kentucky. A lot of these genetics are different than the original genetics that existed here, 100 years ago. Those were fiber genetics for rope. They're tall and thin, and the genetics that we work with are slightly different. They're maximize the flower and the cannabinoids. So the past 5 years, just a handful of folks sitting around trying to figure out how to do this, and essentially that grew every year. From 2014 as a pilot program here in the state, acreage 10x'd each year essentially. This year, we're going into ground with upwards of 10,000 acres under Gencana's watch. That has enabled us to grow over the past 2 years from around 25 employees to over 300 as of today. Those are direct employees, and that doesn't include our farmers or our construction contractors either. We'll go through that in a bit. So essentially, our founders are pioneers in the hemp industry and have assembled a world-class team to come here to Kentucky and help build this business. That all starts with a regulatory environment. 2014 Farm Bill changed everything, gave us just a sliver of a window for this to take root. We came to Kentucky. Some of us, our founders, came, just brought a couple plants. Just how could we make this work? Collaborate with the University of Kentucky, a few others, try to make this into an industry. Hemp, as explained, is cannabis with very little THC, which is the psychoactive cannabinoid, psychoactive molecule. It's so little that, in fact, you could smoke or ingest a whole plant and you wouldn't have a psychoactive effect, essentially. It's very, very minimal. 2018 Farm Bill moved this industry from being a research pilot program into a legal industry. And that was a critical and pivotal moment. And that was driven by legislators here in the state, Leader McConnell, Commissioner Quarles, folks like that. I think we got another video here, all right?
It's truly amazing to see what was once just a vision, now a reality. Folks, this is what leadership looks like. This is why we are successful. This is why we're here.
It's an exciting time to be in the hemp industry in Kentucky, and we expect that in the next few years, there will be tens of billions of dollars in hemp products traded. And it all started here.
This is a great time to be a Kentuckian, a great new crop with a big, bright future. I hope that hemp will be, for us someday, what tobacco was at its peak. And given the scientific work going on here in conjunction with the UK, we may find yet new applications of this extraordinary plant.
Thank you to our strong congressional delegation for making hemp great again.
We like videos. Got a full-time media crew, beautiful farms, it's easy. So what does this mean? And what's next for hemp? So hemp equals cannabis minus THC, we know this. We're trying to understand the disposition of regulators. As Commissioner Quarles mentioned, the FDA is really mulling over right now, where does this fit? Is it a nutrition fact panel? Is it a supplement fact panel? Is it a drug fact panel? We're pretty confident it's not going to be a drug fact panel, though it could exist in some pharmaceuticals. But we'd like to understand more so that we can give guidance to our customers and to consumers and build trust. It's about trust. There's no other industry where you're consuming or putting things on your body where there aren't guidelines and regulations. So early adopters in the industry were hoping that this would be an unregulated, for-the-people product. It's not going to happen, right? We need regulation. We need guidance so that we can advance the industry and make it a global market. So how do we do this? We engage with law enforcement. We support local businesses, and we support family farms. We recognize hemp as food crop, just like corn and soybeans, as Commissioner Quarles mentioned. How do we support those farmers? You know, when you look at the marijuana industry and how they built that in Oregon and Colorado, they built these massive indoor greenhouse facilities, tens of millions of dollars. Canada, you see Canopy Growth and all these guys growing up there, building $100 million facilities. Well, in Kentucky, right here, under the rain, under the sun, we can grow outdoors for a fraction of that cost. That number's incorrect. My marketing team, gotta have a chat with them. So positive impact on farmers and local businesses, rural communities, finally recognize the real potential of hemp. Originally, it's like, okay, what are we gonna use this stuff for? Is it fiber? Is it food? Is it oil? Is it, is it a medicine? And I think the market's kind of determining what that's gonna be, right? Where's the demand gonna come? The United States is probably the largest consumer right now of these products, but I've kind of traveled the world this past couple of years, understanding the marketplaces both here in the United States and globally. And that's led to the ability to grow at the scale we have, exponentially, year over year. Revenues, acreage, plants, multi-million-dollar farm payments for 2018. So back to jobs. Hemp creates jobs. And again, remember just a few years ago, sitting around a room, just 5 or 6 of us trying to figure out how to keep the electric bill paid, trying to keep the lights on. Here you see a picture of groundbreaking at our new facility in Mayfield, Kentucky, out west. Another facility just down the street in Paducah as well. So infrastructure, this year alone, $80 million in investment in infrastructure in the state of Kentucky. This year alone, $10 million in farming. Next year, 2020, we're not even sure. We're gonna need a lot more facilities and a lot more people. Job growth, 2014, just a handful of folks. This year, we just topped 300 this month. Estimated we'll grow to around 350 people that work for Gencana proper in our various processing facilities, headquarters. When you include farmers, construction, that's upward of 550, 600 folks, just in a couple years. Economic impact, we anticipate in 2019 will be $400 million back into the local economies with 350 jobs. It's about helping farmers farm, and that's what it's been since the first days. How does that work? So this is how Gencana does it. We have what we call a certified farming network, bit of a marketing term, but it's true. So what we do is we look for farmers that have the right crop experience. We test their soil, we test their water. We sign them to a long-term exclusive agreement where they come into our network and they grow with us together, long-term. We give them the plants and the genetics that we know will work. We give them the blueprint on how to do it. And then we give them the resources throughout the season to make sure that they have the yield that they're looking for and that we're looking for. So it's a win-win-win, right? That's what the Certified Farming Network is about. So we have folks, applying all over the state, and we're trying to expand as quickly as possible and deploy assets so that we can assist all of these farmers and help them farm.
It's something kind of clicked inside of me that this could potentially be a massively beneficial thing to the human population. I've been able to learn and adapt to using biology to fight biology and making it truly organic. What's helping more than anything is the ability to have a solution-oriented mindset. I mean, I've said many, many times, farmers are some of the smartest people in the world because they go through so much in their life, so much stress, so much adversity that they have to overcome because it's a passion that, we as farmers have to grow and to sustain and to be self-reliant. I'd put them up against anybody on intelligence.
GencanaFarmers.com. You'll see our billboards around the state. Learn more. So what we've really invested in is a commitment to compliance. From the early days of Gincana, we recognized that there was going to be a market for a consistent, compliant supply chain. There's a lot of smaller growers out there and processors around the United States that may or may not be in the gray areas of compliant. They're mixing things in a flex warehouse space in a parking lot in Denver, right? If you're gonna scale globally, it's not gonna fly, right? Because you're gonna get a different product every time you go back to the well. Every time you place a purchase order, you're gonna have a different product, different formulation, no health, no quality control, no FDA inspections. So we recognized this early on and put together a vertical that would actually support global growth of this industry. So it starts with the genetics. Because if you're just processing whatever you can get your hands on, you're kind of in a situation where you got to keep the machines on, you got to buy whatever's available, right? And right now, it's growing agricultural product and commodity, and there's varying levels of quality out there. Kentucky's known for producing some of the best. Because of the structure and the framework around the KDA, it's enabled us to create trust with our customers. So Kentucky has a very, very good name in the global hemp game. Very good name. Because other states, and I won't name them, other states have a lot of cowboys out there that are just doing things the way that they need to do them to get the plants to where they need to be and get them sold. And unfortunately, some of that stuff shows up in COAs, certificates of analysis. Just not doing things the right way, and it's not going to fly in the long term. They're built to make a quick buck and cash out. We're built for the long term, and that's all based on compliance. So you can see genetics, farming, science, QA, QC, and then a final product. And there's a global need for reliable and sustainable supply. So a lot of these multinationals, they haven't even gotten in the game yet. Some of these guys, you're starting to see it at retail. You're starting to see retailers get into the cosmetic side of the industry. We're supporting them. What's really going to change the game is when there are guidelines in place by the FDA and you see the large multinational food brands and the global nutraceutical brands go into retailers like Walmart, Amazon, Target. That hasn't happened yet. It's starting to on the cosmetic side, but it hasn't happened on the largest piece of the industry. So we believe at Gincana that having this vertical, having this chain of custody, consistency, and compliance will enable Kentucky to lead the way globally. There is no other place that a multinational brand can go and get the scale of supply, tens of thousands of acres worth of product, and having the accreditations. The compliance is the future. So what does that mean? International accreditations. So food safety, we're talking about BRC audit, part of the Global Food Safety Initiative, GMP audit, all of the accreditations required for many of these multinational global brands to get into an ingredient space. Why hasn't that happened already? It hasn't happened already because it hasn't been required. So you're seeing some of the leaders in the industry preemptively become compliant, spend money on audits, spend money on SOPs, and actually invest in what will be a platform to launch a global industry. Just a few of the accreditations were FDA inspected, CGMP, Kentucky Kosher, and most importantly, Kentucky Proud. So we're just getting started. We know the cannabinoids are in demand. We don't know which delivery systems are going to win. We're pretty sure that beverage is going to be pretty large. The supplement and vitamin industry is going to be a big part of it. We know cosmetics are already a big piece of the market. So I think it's just starting to evolve. Europe's about five years behind us, as far as growing and legislation. I'm off to London in about 4 hours. There's a lot going to happen there. They know our brand. They know Kentucky. In Europe, in Asia, just this year alone, we've been, my team, we've been all over Dusseldorf, Rotterdam, Barcelona, London, Singapore. This is going global, and it's starting right here. So some other interesting items. Futures of hemp products, animal feed. What can we do with some of these byproducts? After post-extraction, got a lot of what we call dunnage or spent material. They're doing research. We've partnered with a few universities that do research into animal feed, other types of veterinary medicine. So let's go. Hemp is all of cannabis except the THC. Farmers will dominate corn, beans, wheat, and hemp right here in the state of Kentucky. Federally legal cannabis has been here for 5 years, since the 2014 Farm Bill. 2018 Farm Bill is just a better understanding of what 2014 did and opened it up to a larger group. Hemp's just getting started. That's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Please give Mr. Bain a round of applause while they get settled. We have about 8 minutes for some Q&A, so if you have a question, feel free to line up, and we'll take as many of those as we possibly can. I want to ask Commissioner Quarles, well, maybe some are going to be coming to the podium. I've heard you say that the average age of the Kentucky farmer is around 62 years old. Is that correct?
That's
so
right.
What potential do you see with hemp to encourage a future generation of farmers?
Sure. So name another occupation where the average age is almost the retirement age. In farming, it's 62 years old. The only other institution I know where the average age is the United States Senate, okay, where it's like that. And it's important to realize that hemp has brought people, not only young folks, but people who did not grow up on farms, into agriculture, and that's what we desperately need. We had a previous speaker talk about labor shortages. Hemp, as well as other unique crops. We're growing indigo in Kentucky for the organic blue jean industry. The biggest chia farm in North America is in Kentucky as well. So these new, not well-known crops are bringing young people into the fold in agriculture.
Yeah, you would care to comment on that, Garrett?
Yeah, we've been just pleasantly surprised and inundated by folks with interest in getting involved, whether it be on the agricultural side, the extraction, the refinement, the science, PhDs. It's been very, very humbling to see the response of folks from around the state and the country.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm Deborah Stamper with Kentucky Bankers Association, and there are certainly some banks that are hesitant to get involved in hemp production or hemp lending, but we are encouraging our banks every day, and we've got some banks that are very involved. So I encourage anyone in here who represents or is working in the hemp industry, if the bank you've called is not in hemp lending or hemp deposit taking, call us at the KBA. I'll be happy to give you a list of names that can help.
It's probably good news for you, Commissioner. Having any luck?
It is. It seems like our regional community banks have been very open to this. It seems like some of our nationally based ones, they want to do it, but they have to get the go-ahead from someone not from Kentucky. And so I know Leader McConnell just last week made a commitment to work with our banking industry on the national level and their regulators to try to remind them about the legality of this and try to identify certain policy areas that might be making them reluctant. And another thing that we have to get figured out, which goes hand in hand in agribusiness, is the ability to have crop insurance. The Farm Bill will allow hemp to qualify for crop insurance, but it will take a few years to develop a mature financial instrument that won't be abused.
Mr. Garrett.
Yeah, we've had great luck here in the state. We've been very fortunate to work with several banks in the state, and we'll continue to do so. It's something that's developed over the years. Credit card processing has been the most recent pain point where retailers have been unable to process credit cards. So a lot of our customers, we're a private label, we're not a retail brand. A lot of our customers are coming to us, what do we do, what do we do? So we've actually assisted, and some of our national customers are signing up with banks here in the state.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Bobby Clark. Good to see you all. I have been involved, as you all know, with industrial hemp, and one of the questions I've had is there any movement towards exploring the creation of manufacturing parts for the auto industry, as big as that is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
The answer is yes, but we haven't had much luck yet. About 2 years ago, I sat down with the automotive industry to explore the opportunity for farmers to literally grow automotive parts on their farms. And a crop was mentioned in my introduction called canaf. Canaf is a fibrous plant. It's very similar to a hemp plant. It's currently being used in the F-150s that roll off the line right here in Louisville. And so why not try to explore that opportunity? I understand there's a lot of testing that has to go, that's involved for anything goes into an automotive part. But at last count, I think we had about 400 automotive parts suppliers located in Kentucky. We're the third biggest automobile producing state in the United States. And so if we only had a commitment from 2, 3, or 5% of those automotive part manufacturers to incorporate hemp, that could be a big win for us.
Absolutely. I'll let you know I've got my CBD oil from Gincana right here. It has had a dramatic impact on my bursitis in my hip over the last 2 months, so I recommend it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
The popularity of CBD oil, I have a little hitch in my get along too, Commissioner Quarles and Mr. Bain, and I'd say that CBD oil really does work. When I talked to Congressman Jamie Comer recently in D.C., he had mentioned that the CBD popularity is great, but he's concerned that there's not enough emphasis on fiber production and that kind of thing. Do you see that it's leaning really heavily in that area, and maybe there could be some neglect and other possibilities?
I think we have great growth in fiber and grain in Kentucky. In fact, we have silos being built right now on the banks of the Kentucky River just for food-grade hemp seeds. We just had a ribbon cutting in my hometown, Eco Fiber, which is going to be, they already have products for sale in Europe, and they're hoping that the bacteria count that is very low on hemp fibers, which we believe could have a medical purpose as well. Patagonia, again, made their first contract with the Kentucky farmer. And so there is an emphasis on CBD and cannabinoid production in Kentucky, but in 2019, we're seeing some aggressive players in both fiber and grain as well, which are two of the more mechanized parts of hemp production.
Mr. Bay?
Yeah, we have to understand this industry is just starting, right? And if CBD and cannabinoids are what sets the spark that gets the investment dollars coming in, right? The research, all that takes a lot of money. And if CBD is what sets that as the catalyst for that investment and that research, then great, it's CBD. But it's going to evolve, and there's 100 other cannabinoids, and there's fiber, and there's plastics, there's hempcrete. I mean, this is just the beginning, and I think CBD is the most, I guess, illustrious start to that, but it's going to evolve over the years.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Commissioner,
introduce yourself, please, if you don't
I'm
mind.
John Mark Hack. I work with a company called Bristol Group. I applaud your efforts on this and everything else you do, Commissioner, but you said 1,000 farms out of 76,000 were licensed, so that's 1.3%. What do you project the ceiling of participation to be? And then my question for Mr. Bain is, 33 states have legalized marijuana for either recreational or medicinal use, including 4 of 7 that border the Commonwealth. Will the hemp industry oppose or support marijuana legalization in the Commonwealth?
Let's take the last question first, shall we? Mr. Bain.
So there's a very fine line, obviously, between hemp and marijuana. Our focus has always been CBD and the minor cannabinoids. I think that there is a global and national movement over the past few years that is trending in that direction. We have been very calculated in our efforts to stay a hemp producer, right? It is what the DNA of our company is. So while we see that there's a window for THC, we've been firmly committed to the hemp crop in the state of Kentucky.
Mr. Commissioner, if you'll comment on that before you answer the first question.
We have an opportunity with hemp right now in Kentucky. We want to make sure that we guide it and take it as far as we possibly can. And so we're focused on hemp at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. It's a legal product, and we are a limited resource agency, okay? I get 0 appropriations from the General Assembly for our hemp program. And so we are focused where we can just on hemp, and we're going to try to knock it out of the ballpark. To answer John Mark's question, the question was, do you project a ceiling on how many farmers will grow this? I don't know what the ceiling is, and I'm not going to implement one. I think that in America, you have the freedom to succeed or fail on your own. That's up to you. And I think that for a lot of our hemp companies, they've made a commitment to help out small farmers. There's another hemp company in Northern Kentucky that intentionally decided to work with 130 different farmers instead of a dozen, because they want to help spread the opportunity around it. And be quite frank with you, there's so much opportunity right now in hemp, we don't think that there's a maximum to reach yet anyway.
If we get into plastics, concrete, fiber, and the big retailers get into the food and beverage game, you'll need a lot more percentage points than one in the state of Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett Bain. Thank you, Commissioner Ryan Quarles. It's been a good conversation. Give them a round of applause, please.
Good job. Yeah.